5 entitled Kids of Millionaires Who Got Humbled Really Quickly by the Real World. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. A while ago, Reddit user GhostRxM asked what was the best moment you've seen where the real world hit a spoiled rich kid. A handful of the submissions in the thread were about kids who had, or whose family, had millions. The stories ranged from funny to straight-up scandalous, so here are the best ones. 1. A kid I knew won a cool $1 million off a scratch ticket when he was 19. He acted like a big shot, arrogantly buying rounds of drinks for entire bars. He didn't do anything productive for 20 years. Then he got the last check, an alcoholic with no savings, no assets, and no skills. He is now in and out of hospitals for alcohol poisoning. He lost his paper hat job, his girlfriend, and everything else. Wasting too much time. 2. A guy from my robotics group had his entire life handed to him. His dad was stupidly rich because his own father had bought shares in an oil field that turned out to have 40 times the expected yield, turning a $100,000 investment into around $3 million. He then invested that money into real estate rentals. The guy decided it would be fun to go on a school trip to Philadelphia, acting rich as ever. He drove his lifted, modified SUV to a school in North Philly where we were doing a robotics event. Talking to younger kids about how fun it was and how their school had started offering it. After that, we were supposed to go to the Franklin Institute from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., followed by a Phantoms hockey game. Well, at 9:30, we left the school to see our bus driver talking to cops. 5 kids had driven themselves down, and guess which car was stolen? His $90,000 monstrosity was missing. After 2 months, all that was ever recovered was his stereo from a pawn shop and his laptop. The best part? He didn't have insurance on it yet because he said, "I can just buy the other person's car if there's an accident." Anyway, I'd win the fight. His dad flipped out over it, cut his allowance to $200 a month, and forced him to drive a beater. Sutology. 3. A friend of mine from college, whose parents were rich enough to own multi-million-dollar homes in America and Europe, used to belittle me for being happy to go to whatever medical school I could get into. I ended up getting into my state school, and she responded by saying she could get into that school in a second because her mom had connections in the admissions department. She added that she would never bother applying there because it wasn't a good school. She also claimed that her mom could get her into a top 20 ranked school. Throughout college, she had this attitude towards me, implying that even though I was doing better than her in classes, I would end up at whatever school would take me, while she would go to her dream school because that's just how the world works. I checked up on her on Facebook this year, and it turns out she's not exactly at her dream school. She is at her state medical school, which is actually significantly lower ranked than the one she mocked me for attending. I don't want to say I was hoping she wouldn't get in anywhere because that's a little harsh, but I was happy to see her get put in her place a little bit. Howdolini. 4. There was this one kid, about 13 or 14 years old, who was talking online about how her family wouldn't take her on holiday for the second time that year. We called her out for being a spoiled brat. And she responded with, "I'm not rich, my family only makes $1 million a year. My summer camp isn't even $3,000, and other reasons why she couldn't possibly be rich." 5. A kid I went to high school with came from a very wealthy family, worth hundreds of millions per sibling of the original company founder. He was the child of one of these siblings and would regularly be picked up from school in insane supercars. His family was actually pretty cool. They just happened to enjoy their money in that way. This kid, however, thought the world was his. He eventually moved to the US and quickly became a Trump supporter, posting all over his page about Trump being a god-tier president and attacking welfare users and immigrants, despite being an immigrant himself. That was until his visa renewal was rejected, and he ended up back in the UK. Without his parents' support, he found himself lining up at the job center looking for work. His high school qualifications were no longer cutting it in the job market once his parents weren't handing him jobs and visa sponsorships. Ironically, his Trump-supporting posts were the reason his parents essentially disowned him. Word had gotten around our small town. and they couldn't deal with the embarrassment of their kid's actions, especially in Scotland. They essentially told him to find those bootstraps he kept posting about on Facebook. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: Dinar Recaps.